Well, hello, hello, hello. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever it is that you are today. My name is Alex Sanchez, Senior Marketing Manager at the Council of Supply Chain Management Professionals, or CSCMP. Um, and I want to welcome everybody to Understanding the Power of Distributed Order Management in Omnichannel and Beyond. Webinar sponsored by our good friends and CSCMP members, Softbeyond. I am seeing that we still have attendees joining the webinar. So while we wait for them to trickle in, I want to sincerely, on behalf of the Council of Supply Chain Management Professionals, to thank our members for their continued support, which makes possible for us to deliver this type of cutting-edge content and webinars. For anyone interested in CSCMP membership information, additional details can be found on the CSCMP site, which is cscmp.org. We also have a listing of upcoming webinars and events, such as this one on the homepage. A couple of housekeeping items. Attendees on this webinar are going to be muted for better webinar experience. So, but however, we do want you to be interactive, and we want to hear from you. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask those questions at any time using the question box in the GoToWebinar control panel. And our moderators and panelists will be able to address those as soon as they can. I believe that's all I have to say. And with that out of the way, I would like to introduce Dan Gilmore, our fantastic moderator from Softbeyond. So take it away, Dan.
Thanks, Alex, and thanks for those kind words, and thanks all of you out there for joining today in this webinar on talking about one of my favorite topics, which is distributed order management, which is really a very different kind of supply chain software application, as we'll cover today. Very prominent in omni-channel retail, but as I hope will convince you today, well beyond that as well, and something that I think is a growing interest. We had a little big registration for this broadcast on the eve of Memorial Day weekend here, so I guess that kind of bespeaks to the level of interest there is out there in distributed order management, or what is typically referred to as DOM. I am again Dan Gilmore. I'm a Chief Marketing Officer at Softbeyond. You may know me. I'm quite active in writing and publishing, have been for decades, so you may know me from different venues. And very pleased to be joined today with my colleague, who's the real brains of the outfit, Satish Kumar, who's the VP of Client Services at Softbeyond, and really is a world-class expert in distributed order management. Satish, you might just say hi to the audience real quickly.
Hello. Thank you, Dan.
Sorry, I think I caught him on mute there, so maybe unexpected. So anyways, Satish is the guy that really knows this stuff in and out, and implemented it, used it, a lot of different things, and he'll be a fantastic resource for us today. So people usually like to know, who it is you're talking to here. Well, Satish and I actually literally wrote the book, we say, on the distributed order management with what we call the Little Book of DOM. It was published, I think, in 2019. We're refreshing it with a 2.0 version. But it has a lot of great information there, quick read, 65, 70 pages in a small book format. Certainly, we encourage you to download that. If you go out to the softbeyond.com website, you can easily find that there. I think it's available on the homepage, actually, and it goes through a lot of cool stuff on DOM. You'll, I think, find a lot of very great feedback on the content, I'll just be honest. So certainly you can take advantage of that. And then 2019 also, I believe, we kind of did a synopsis view of that for CSMP's Excellent Supply Chain Quarterly magazine, titled it The Most Important Supply Chain Software That You Don't Know Much About. It got a great take there, and sort of if you're a member of CSCMP, that CSCMP quarterly issues are available to you, and if you just search on distributed order management or Softbeyond or something, you'll be able to find it and kind of do a quick read of the little book, which itself is very concise. So just some resources for you. So again, so you know who you're talking about here. Who is Softbeyond? We're a supply chain software provider. It's a whole suite of solutions, but three primary categories: warehouse management, which was started the company in 1999. More recently, a sort of complementary set of capabilities in what's usually called warehouse execution systems that orchestrates and optimizes order fulfillment processes with the WMS or without the WMS. And then DOM, as we talked about there. And then those are the three products we really go to market with, and then have a variety of supporting products that you can also consider. I'll note one thing, because this is really important here. This suite of products is based on a rules engine. As you see there on the left, rules engine functionality is fundamental to how DOM does what it does, as we'll get through today. And I think it's worth noting. And again, just a quick standard logo list of companies. Not all of these are DOM customers, but a number of them are restaurant warehouse management. We have a number of joint DOM and WMS customers, gain a lot of experience in that area, especially outside of omnichannel retail. So let's get into it. DOM is really a newer kind of software. It's having a huge impact for many, but it's also just not well understood, as I said in that Supply Chain Quarterly article. Really started in the late 1990s, early 2000s in the dot-com sort of boom there. It was invented by a couple of companies who were really looking into how do we, connect the e-tail presence back to back-end suppliers and do so maybe without even touching the product ourselves. And that was kind of its genesis. It kind of went into some dormancy as dot-com bubble happened, and then we had the Great Recession and a lot of other things. It kind of went, I'd say dormant is quite the right word, but somewhat static, or not a lot of advancement for about a decade or so, frankly. And then in the last 3-4 years, it's gained a growing prominence with all the focus on omnichannel, the growth of e-commerce, and not only for retailers, this is very important, but for direct-to-consumer brand companies as well. We're getting all kinds of calls from those kinds of companies that are looking to how they can visibility to inventory and order, order anywhere, ship anywhere, those kind of strategies. But importantly, also there's many applications outside of omnichannel, and we're going to cover some of those today. So what does DOM do? Just a summary slide I like to use, and this is really to me one of the fundamental differences of DOM versus any other kind of software that I'm aware of. It enables companies to very precisely define and then dynamically execute overall business rules and then specific order fulfillment strategies and adapt those over time. I don't think there's ever been a kind of software where you could so granularly and so easily define how you want the processes to execute, and based on what rules and what constraints and what parameters. There's really nothing quite like it, I don't believe, in the whole supply chain software industry. I'm not sure any industry. So something very, very different here, and in this dynamic world, that kind of power is a tremendous advantage. Beyond that, and we'll get into this more in a little bit, provides granular real-time visibility to inventory wherever you've got it across an extended network at various level of detail in terms of attributes. It does what we call fulfillment orchestration, and that is really following that set of rules, conditional rules in many cases, of how that order should flow based on what's happening right now. It's doing this for each and every order, not orders as a big block. Each and every order is getting treated separately and executed the way it was designed in the strategy. If you are in the retail world, it can rapidly enable many e-fulfillment processes: buy online, pick up in store, curbside pickup, store fulfillment, store returns, vendor drop ship, etc. So a lot of different, and do those in a way that you don't have to modify your existing systems. It can manage complex order policies around things like back orders and subscriptions and inventory allocation across channels and many other things. We'll get into all these in a little bit more detail in just a bit. And then very critically, optimal order sourcing, selecting the node that meets, I like to say it this way, meets customer commitments while considering network capacities and constraints, and doing that at least possible cost. And that's true not only for B2C, where we think it would maybe so most often, but as in many B2B applications as well. And again, we'll cover some of those. So a common question, of course, is how is DOM, distributed order management, different than traditional order management, which has been around for a long time? And I just kind of like to say it this way, that traditional order management is kind of order processing centric, and it's kind of, orders at the line item level and high level inventory allocation and pricing and promotions and credit card processing and things of that nature. Whereas DOM is more order fulfillment oriented, that's centric. It does that sourcing logic using a rules engine and provides that granular visibility to inventory inside or outside of your own four walls, integrates with suppliers, et cetera, et cetera. Now, having said that, there's no question that there's a bit of a merger going on here, and some OMS is picking up some DOM characteristics, DOM is picking up some OMS characteristics, or the two solutions can kind of be combined, and we're certainly seeing that in a number of applications as well. And just I'll note all the way, all these topics are covered in a bit more detail in the little book of DOM that I referenced earlier in the presentation. So now I'm going to turn it over to Satish, who's going to get a little bit granular here. Hope that's what you're looking for in terms of the different functionality that is really available inside the DOM and the different components that are made up that you may use or not use.
Thanks, Dan. So this slide, the functional components slide, gives a 10,000-foot view of what the DOM from a technical perspective, what the components exist. So the way we architected the application is take the functional side of it. For example, one of them is the back order management or the subscription management, subscription or auto ship. Nowadays, everything is a subscription based, every from the beauty products to the shaving products and so on. So that basically each of them is a component. On your left side of the screen is basically your Dan was referring to is your fulfillment nodes or stores, or it's your drop ships, or even the pop-up, the pop-up DCs. On the right side of the screen is basically your capturing channels that can be marketplaces, that can be your own ERP systems or Excel uploads. It doesn't matter. Those are the order capturing channels. And below that is a different enabling tools, as Dan was referring to. DOMS is just not just a visibility alone. That's what some of the notion there. It's not just the visibility alone. It takes the overall supply chain view of it, primarily in the execution side and some parts of supply chain planning side when it comes to when the procure to pay, maybe plan to fulfill some of those functionalities so that you can plan accordingly from the load balancing perspective. So the components, the way they're architected basically is we created them as the processes so that, whether it's in, order sourcing or the Omni processor is basically it refers to all those acronyms we hear, the BOPIS and ship from store and so on. So that's basically gives the high level. And then below that, we have the DOM control layer that is basically as an ML component, machine language component in it. It basically looks at the patterns from the order sourcing perspective, from the inventory balancing perspective. It looks at the patterns and identifies what is the best place to source from, or what is the best place to place the inventory from. That is the criticality of it. It's just not only the source from. To source it, we need to make sure that the inventory exists there. So that's what basically the controller layer takes all this on the left side of the fulfillment side, as well as on the order capture side, and come up with a pattern on what's the best place to source it from, or best place to place the inventory from, or the visibility across the board.
Very good. So so very good. So you can see there's quite a bit going on there. And of course, in the retail side of things, it generally requires integration with one of the different storefronts. Satish, maybe just walk us through that a little bit.
Yeah, this is once again, in the previous slide you've seen on the top right-hand corner, those are the order captures. So here we just listed out a few of the, the marketplaces or the e-commerce platforms. There's few thousands of them. I just listed out some of the bigger ones. So basically, you can configure them. Most of you know that you can configure them as the webhooks, or you can configure them as a pull, depending on your processes, so that when the order gets created, there are some customers, for example, a Shopify-based platform or Salesforce, the SFCC platform, they manage the refunds, cancels, all those things within the DOMS. Some customers manage it in the, within the platform, whether it's a Salesforce platform or a Shopify platform. Irrespective of where you manage, DOMS can manage, you can configure the DOM saying that which is the system of record. If I'm for the cancellation, that's the system of record, it will do that. So that's basically, we're trying to give you the execution piece from the marketplaces, how you do that. There's so much, we have quite a few adapters already built in, but any new customer comes in, most of them are either REST JSON or GraphQL. So most of us, for us, onboarding a marketplace takes probably a couple of days, depending on the customer.
Very good. So thank you, Satish, with that, and he'll be back with you in just a second. So what we're going to do now is just go through some of the distributed order management use cases in the little book referenced previously. I think we go through 6 or 7 of them. We just picked out 3 or 4 here today that we'll go through and try to do it relatively promptly, but just give you some sense of the different ways that all that technology that Satish was talking about can be effectively used. And first, of course, is this omni-channel enablement and optimization. These are really 2 different use cases we're kind of combining into one. But one useful way to think about things from a perspective, this is actually a model I developed a long time ago. But if you think about points of interaction, all the different places where an order can be placed and needs to be captured, And then you think about all the different places where you might want to be able to fulfill that inventory from, whether it's, as Steve said, your own DCs, your own stores, third-party DCs, vendor drop ship, manufacturer, pop-up locations, et cetera. So you think about points of interaction, POIs, or points of fulfillment, POFs, POF, and then you have to bring returns into the mix. Where are the different places that somebody can return inventory after they've received it at their home or their place of business or whatever it happens to be? And so what you need to be able to do, and Dom can do this, without changing, internal systems, is how do I enable all the different combinations of these POIs, POFs, and PORs, points of return? So that's one of the key factors that Dom does. And then, it provides out-of-the-box support for the process we've talked about already, BOPIS, curbside, et cetera. And again, allows you to get into those processes or add those processes generally without having to do anything other than working with us on the integration to your existing internal systems. And then it gets into this notion of lowest cost fulfillment. Again, it has to be done in the context of customer service or customer commitments, and it has to be considered with network capacities and constraints. So we have customers, for example, that have a limit of X amount of orders can be fulfilled at a retail location per day. Let's say it's 50 or 75 or whatever it happens to be. When it gets to be 76, that order needs to be moved to a different store, even that's the best, cheapest shipping location, but we just don't have the capacity, okay? And we actually need to be monitoring that capacity as the day goes on. If they get behind or whatever, and it looks like they're not going to hit their 50, then maybe we have to proactively move some orders to another location to make sure that commitment. And this is really all about that lowest cost. How do I reach or improve profitability in e-commerce operations in an Amazon world? And we know that's a big challenge. This gives you a great tool to manage those costs by picking that lowest cost shipping every time. And Satish will walk you through a little bit about how that optimal order sourcing works.
Yeah, the sourcing, thanks, Dan. The sourcing here, it looks like, it's not really the top down. It's just for the representation purposes. We created that. It can be a recursive, for the representation purposes. I just showed the ERP, but order captures can be a number of channels there when it comes into the DOMS. So as you all know, that the primary reason the DOMS is it's one order hub. I think Dan showed in the previous slides. So, this is primarily the US based. Where for the outside the US, we have a different, it's going to be province or it can be this country based fulfillment side of it. So basically, once it gets into the DOMS, it's basically you can define it, whether it's a pre-orders, for example, in your company, if your product is you have the pre-orders, new release products, you can capture the orders, but you don't need to release them, based on the street date, based on the when the product is going to release. If it's a new book or a new movie or a new music, any of those things, you can control that within the DOMS. You only release that when it's going to be shipped out from the distribution center or the vendor, and based on the processing time plus the transit time. So how you do that, so you can define your sourcing whether based on the order segmentation, whether a pre-order back catalog is different, whether it's a kit orders, there's a different. So you can define the order, based on the order segmentation, you can define what is my best place. Some customers will have all the back catalog is in, one particular node and every order gets there. And some customers scatters everything depending on top 1,000 SKUs, fast moving SKUs across the board. So the sourcing is you can do by 3-digit zip code or, that you can define it. It's user defined. The key here is it's user defined how I want to source it. So it's we listed out some of those things there, 100% inventory available. Can I do the back order? Can I do the, what do you call is split shipments? You can define all those. And as we all know that if there's a split, means there is going to be additional cost. So it's more of it comes down to customer experience versus the freight. So that is up to the business which way they want to make it. But the DOMS allow you. It's like the Swiss Army knife. You come up with your own criteria, and then you can also set up the exceptions. With gift orders, you don't want to split the gift order. So those are the things you can. We don't want to send one gift, one pant from one place and shirt place one place or something like that. So those are the different rules you can define it. And it's a recursive here within the fulfillment. For example, if it's not fulfilled within the given time period, It will automatically, you can configure it. It's not fulfilled, let's say 3 hours, and the cutoff time is 4 p.m. and the order is not even picked yet. You can pull that order and send it to the, for example, from the east to the Midwest or West Coast and so on. So those are the that is all handled by the DOMs. So there's no customer service, or there's no person on the phone or exchanging emails. That's really the key here is the fulfillment nodes. You have the flexibility. You can manage the workload balancing. It's just not sourcing here. When they say optimization, you're balancing the workload. That, let's say, the site capacity, they can process 10,000 orders, but they still have open of 10,000 orders per day, but they still have a 6,000 plus since yesterday. So you're not going to drop one more 10,000. You will just limit extra only 4,000 more. So those are the things you can control within the DOMs.
And I'll just add, I think, this is where the power of a rules engine comes so into place. This kind of complex, sophisticated, logic. You're defining, and these are not IT people writing code. These are, super users, or whatever term you want to use here, that are doing natural language definition of these rules. And there's no right answer. So we have some customers, for example, that don't want to take store inventory down to zero. So if you have only 1 or 2 left, they don't want that store to get the order. Others say this concept of ship to zero. It doesn't matter. If that's the best place to ship it from, go ahead and take it. There's no right answer to that question. You may start one way and change down the road. But the point is that you can define those rules and change it back change it the other way if that's what you want, without having to write code, without having to program, by just setting rules within this engine. And that's where the power really comes from. So, just kind of wrapping this up here real quick, again, process enablement of these omni-channel functions without the time and cost of modifying existing systems. And so, and after you've implemented it, you can greatly accelerate the idea to enablement lifecycle. For example, adding curbside pickup, it can be done in I'll call it almost a trivial amount of time versus, writing code to make that happen as well. And as you add new channels or services or sourcing options, you can very easily add those to the mix. So you've got, internal DCs, and now you're going to open up pop-up DCs or a third-party facility on the West Coast or whatever. You just add those and change the rules, and you're up and running. And then that profit optimization we talked about, automation of a lot of manual processes and decision-making that's done with order fulfillment today without a DOM. And very importantly, there's not just a cost benefit here. There's a top line bump as well by making all the inventory in your network available for sale and allocation in the right time, in the right place. And all that in the end is also going to go towards enhancing the customer experience. So a powerful set of benefits from DOM and retail and omnichannel. But moving ahead here, there's also many businesses outside of retail and consumer brand direct to consumer. Is optimal order sourcing outside of those areas. So often there's complex rules about how orders need to be fulfilled in those non-retail businesses as well. And really anybody that has any level of network complexity and or constraints, relative to fulfillment is a potential DOM candidate. So we got a couple of examples here, and one of those Satish will talk about. It's a e-pharma company we work with, and Satish, you might want to just talk about the order sourcing process there.
Thanks, Dan. The PBM, what we have there is, it's just not regular sourcing. We also have to go to the compliance related, whether it's insurance exists, whether that pharmacy has still a valid certificate, and there's quite a few health, Medicare, Medicaid rules. And we also will look at, for example, because we are getting into summer now, and if that the dwell time of some of the medicines has to be certain specific, because it requires the ice pack, and also you don't send it, like, for example, if you're sending it to Arizona or wherever the hot places are, you can't send it in the ground because there had to be an ice pack. So DOMs will automatically identify the weather. We make the API call to the weather and basically, and identify what is the weather there in the next 3 days or next 5 days. And based on that, it will automatically update the service level from ground to next day air. Or if there is going to be any kind of a storm related, then we can automatically divert it to some other fulfillment center, so that there's these people are there. So that's really one of the piece. And we also have there is what we call them is a simulation. You can do the simulation against the production and say, basically, if I have all things are good, if I have inventory, if I have labor, if I have, capacity, what is the best place? What that will also help you is identify, in the supply chain planning side, they do the network balancing, is identify that, we're shipping to most of them, let's say somewhere in North Carolina, maybe we should open a smaller footprint there. So those are the things we basically implemented for this largest PBM in the country.
Very good, Satish. That's a great story. And this is a company that's not using them yet, but working with them on some proof of concept. It's an industrial type company. This is really fascinating to me. And historically, they've had their own direct customers that they ship from their own facilities or third-party facilities. But then they have other customers, either based on geography or product type or some other attribute, that are handled by distributors. And it's kind of like the customer direct, company direct customers are that way, and the channel customers are that way, and never the twain shall meet. But they're looking at saying, geez, sometimes we're out of a product in where we would normally ship it from to a customer, and either we have to back order the product and risk losing the order, or it's in Ohio, and we have to ship it from California at our own expense in great expense in terms of the transportation costs. And so the question is being asked, well, maybe we should take some of those orders and move them over to a nearby channel partner and have them ship it to our direct customer. Well, it sounds like that makes some sense, but you think about all the implications. It implicates revenue because it impacts margin because the channel partners are getting a discount, right, or whatever. And you get into the rules of, okay, so now it's an additional shipment. How do we handle that? So the point again is that, I don't know what the right answer to this is, but it's a complex question, and you need a system that can define what those rules are about, in what circumstances and what conditions would we actually hand an order off that we used to fill direct but can't today to one of our channel partners. So that's just another example of the kind of complexity you can get into in terms of optimal order sourcing, even outside of retail, and really more complex, frankly, than retail and omnichannel. So benefits are very similar to the first couple of use cases. You have that invisibility and inventory capacities and strengths across an extended network. In the example I just gave, you need to be able to see not only that your inventory, but what is the channel partner's inventory, because it doesn't do any good to offload an order for them if they don't have the inventory either. So you need that visibility. You're going to automate that order routing based on a number of order and product attributes. Again, coming down to costs, you're going to try to find the lowest transportation costs for orders while meeting those customer service needs, and flexibility to enact those kind of sophisticated business and logistics strategies over time with minimal effort. And this is really key. The example I just gave, again, I'm sure this will take a number of iterations. If it goes forward, it'll take a number of iterations before they finally get it how they want it, based on experience and whatnot. And you can make those changes without writing code. You can make those changes by simply defining rules. Okay, 2 use cases left. One is what Satish kind of represent, an enterprise order hub. The reality of it is that many companies have a mishmash of different traditional order management and ERP systems, especially in the industrial world. One path out of that is to, try to get every operation and business unit on a single version of the same ERP. That's one path, but it's hard, long, and expensive, and we're seeing a great interest in companies looking for an alternative to that. And that is what we often call a order hub, and that is putting DOM on top of all these different systems. You see there on the bottom right, different factories, different ERP systems, different distribution points, whatever. And again, this notion of an enterprise order hub, it's going to provide the visibility to those orders. It's going to route the order. We're working with another big industrial company on this exact application. And used to be able to split out the line items that go into the order about where they're going to be sourced from. And then, allow you to do some order consolidation in terms of coordinating shipments from different plants. So this is more of an industrial type of scenario here, or manufacturing scenario, but maybe not only, but it's certainly something we're seeing a lot of interest in. The benefits, again, you can efficiently process orders across a disparate OMS and ERP environment without the need to migrate the ERP to all the locations in a common OMS. You can do that if you want. That's one option. But another is to put a DOM layer on top. It's going to improve customer service and allow you to take orders from different business units in one place and then generate ultimately a single invoice, and a much improved visibility to order flow and fulfillment information. And then one more, this is kind of an interesting application as well. I call it multi-echelon order and returns management. This is very common in the spare and repair parts industry, and maybe there's some folks in that segment out there, maybe some other areas as well. But parts operations, repair parts operations, commonly have, a master DC or several master DCs. They have regional distribution centers or warehouses, and then they may have, local warehouses, or even, a mobile warehouse in terms of a van that the technicians may be driving around. And so in the end, really all these different use cases, the fundamental challenge is the same thing. So in this case, it's where across that broad network of multiple levels of DC should this part be sourced if it's needed for a repair job, either known or expected, or, in terms of what the work is going to be that day. So, you need to factor many variables in making that decision. It's no different than if I have, if the part is only available at the regional, or it's not available at the regional warehouse, then I obviously need to move it up to the master DC, but are all the line items available? Or do I have to do I have to combine them in some different way? So this is really the same fundamental problem. And one interesting thing in the service parts industry is you sometimes have to factor in service commitments. That if I especially have business-to-business customers that I've committed that I'm going to have certain inventory on the shelf, those that constraint. Even though I've got the part in this DC and it's the best place to ship it from, if I've only got one and I can't risk missing my service agreements by shipping that out, I may have to move that order to another fulfillment point that's got multiple levels of those products. And then in service parts, again, specifically, when the work is complete, there's stuff that needs to be, parts that something needs to be done with them. It may be something you thought you needed and you didn't need it, and it needs to be shipped back as a still brand new in the box of product. Maybe it's a product that needs to be repaired and needs to be repaired, sent to a repair center. Maybe the product needs to be scrapped. Maybe it can be refurbished. Okay. And so in this case, we're doing that kind of reverse logic and telling the technician, 5 or 6,000 of them, where it is they need to send that product based on the same kind of rule set that we've talked about in the past. And so you see there that the DOM can optimize both the sourcing and the reverse logistics process. And again, it's that ability to do it in terms of rules, not coding, that really makes a difference. Very interesting application there. And you get the kind of benefits, that granular visibility of across the network, similar to the other use cases that we talked about there. Optimal sourcing to reduce logistics costs and time, and balancing that inventory across the network, as Satish talked about. Reduce inventory costs by sending return inventory to the optimal node. It just may need to send it to it. We may tell them to keep the part, he or she to keep the part. We may tell it to ship it to another technician just one town over that needs it. So it doesn't even need to go to the regional or master warehouses. And it just makes the job a lot easier for the service technicians, and kind of leads to some increased job satisfaction, we were told by the customer. So some interesting sort of different examples there outside of omnichannel retail. So we've got some examples of some in retail and beyond. And Satish, maybe I'll let you go ahead and run this case study.
Yeah, thanks, Dan. Yep, this particular case study is a retailer. They're a boutique retailer. They have probably around 70 plus stores, but they're direct to consumer only, plus their stores, and they don't sell their product anywhere on other e-commerce platforms, or like in Amazon's or any eBay's or anywhere. And there, for them, basically, the transition to the omnichannel started 5 years back, and compared to the other omnichannel projects, this is not a few years or investment or few years project. We were able to enable the pickup from store, the pickup in store, the BOPIS, in probably within 3 months. And then we continue to enable the other functions. They also have a Softbeyond store module, so that they know that the endless aisle and other topics you hear on the market. So they know what is in the front and what is in the back room, and we know what's the product received. So, for example, when the COVID hit all of us last year, all their stores became basically a distribution center, so mini distribution centers, I should say. So they were able to ship it from the store, and as we all now accustomed to this in the new normal, the curbside pickup. If you think about it, people say curbside pickup as a function, but it's no different than pickup in store. The only difference is there is some kind of a notification to the consumer saying that I'm outside. That's the only difference, really. But so we enable the curbside pickup. So these are all the functions from the Omni functions enabled it. One other key for them is basically is also the inventory balancing. So when you get the purchase order, to one distribution center, it will automatically cross docks, as I mentioned in the previous couple of minutes back. It will automatically cross docks where to place the inventory based on your stratification of the prior sales, prior shipments, and say I had to put 10% in this DC, 10% in this store. It will automatically create a crosstalk so that it gets shipped and stuff. Otherwise, it will be multiple touches. You put away and you bring it back and ship it out. So that's what basically does the uh, inbound flow optimization that reduces a lot of the cost and also the stock outs at the distribution centers, plus also reduces your freight cost because you're placing your product in the right place. That's really and the rules, as Dan said, it's all dynamic, am I right? So if there is a node, whatever reason there is a power outage or there is a storm, you can shut off the node by just disabling the node and pull all the orders. System will do that. As soon as you disable the node with a mouse click, it will go back and pull all the orders from that node to the other nodes wherever there's inventory available. If the inventory is not available, it will just go into the back order process.
Very good. And this is another one, good one, Tish. We'll go ahead. I'll let you walk through it.
Yeah. So this one basically is once again is the DOMS. It's a global rollout. They have the largest music company in the world. So they have a lot of artist stores. Each territory can have anywhere between, in the US, we have probably around 350 plus stores. So that's 350 plus websites. So every territory has a different, the artist stores and the Shopify stores. Basically, DOMS gathers all this information of all the orders, and it will identify which territory it can be fulfilled from. Every country has their own distribution center or 3PLs, not their own. All of them are 3PLs. So everybody has a different layouts or different formats and so on. But the key here is they also, for them, the pre-order and the street dates are critical because anybody in that business with a new release, we all know that you don't want your product, the new product, to be out on the market before it released to the mainstream. So all that processes are managed, and this also has the shared inventory that is also managed by the DOMs. So that is we have totally around, all said and done, we probably will have around 1,000 plus stores where DOMS connects to it and identifies what's the best place to ship it from, along with pre-order, future dated, and also the splits.
Yeah, very good. Sorry, I jumped to the net that you wrapped up. And just one more in the consumer packaged goods industry with the big focus on vendor dropship.
Yeah, this one, yeah, they're basically for them. They're now they're public now, but they used to be a smaller company. They used to have quite a few. I think when we went live five or six plus years ago with the DOMS, they used to have like 65 plus vendor dropship. A lot of them are mom and pop stores, so there's no EDI or web services. It's just basically emailing out, and we get an email saying that they shipped, and DOMS will take the note and complete the ship confirmation. So for them, that is the key at the time when they're growing. So it's all the dropship vendors. They have two types of dropships. One is a dropship vendor. They ship it from there to the customer. They also do the dropship where for the large stores like Costco's or Sam's Club, when they get an order, they dropship to the vendor to ship directly there. And they also do the dropship on behalf of Nordstrom or Neiman Marcus. If they send an order, they will send. These guys will become a vendor. They ship directly to the customers on behalf of Nordstrom's or Neiman Marcus. And we also go again as the one key call out here is we get the forecast, the 52-week forecast, and we continue to measure how their order is performing against the forecast, so that if they reach above that forecast, there is, they're not going to stop the fulfillment, but we put the order on hold, give the notification saying that they are 10% within the threshold, so that they need to make a decision if they don't have inventory, how I'm going to do the allocation, because DOMS does the inventory allocation based on the customer tier. They can identify what the priority is. You can allocate the inventory based on that. I have only 1,000 units but I have 10 customers ordering 150 each. You can define that how you do the inventory allocation. So the forecast for them helps them out, saying that, okay, this customer is already above the forecast. They reach out to them, and if they need to raise their procurement, new PO, and so on.
Okay, very good. Thanks, Satish. Well said in terms of those case studies there. So, well, we're wrapping up today. You can take some questions here in just a second. Here's just some contact information for myself and Satish. If you want to reach out to us, certainly would love to talk with you. And again, that little book of distributed order management available on the Softbeyond.com website, or if you just Google search little book of distributed order management, it shows up right at the top. So something you may want to consider. And we'll just spend the next few minutes. We did get a number of questions that came in there. We'll spend about the next 5-6 minutes wrapping this up here with some questions. And Satish, we got this, which we always do, which is a question about, what's a DOM implementation look like? How long does it take? What's the effort? That kind of
thing. Good question. That's a very common question, and I always tell them it's because with the DOM compared to other systems, it's a building block. It's a typical implementation we can bring up. Actually, we're bringing up for one customer in 2 months, but typically it's 3 to 4 months. I'm talking about just connecting to the upstream and the downstream, and then you can add your business rules. So the basic DOM fundamentals, sourcing and all, it usually is for 3 to 4 months. The fastest we are doing now is 2 months.
2 months, very good. Okay, obviously that's a much bigger conversation. We'd love to talk with you about that, but that gives you at least some reasonable idea, and maybe a little bit faster than you might have thought was likely. Let's see here, Satish. Okay, I'm going to give this one to you too, because I know the answer. But the question really is about, do you have visibility to and/or can you allocate either in transit or expected receipts in terms of orders?
Yes, we can do that. We didn't call out that. I don't know whether it's in the slide. Yes, we can allocate against in transit. We also have we can also mortgage the inventory. So you can also do that. I don't have an orders, but I know there's an orders coming in. I can set aside this inventory like a reservation, or so yes, you can do that. Allocation against in transit. Actually, most of them do that.
Okay, let's see here. Maybe just a couple more. You referenced the question on Satish. You referenced the notion of workload balancing. Can you just explain that in a little bit more detail?
Yep, sure. Workload balancing is it varies by each customer. Each customer defines differently. So workload balancing includes the capacity, that includes the labor, machines, so on, and in some customers are purely the labor. For example, take the stores. I won't drop more than 100 orders, and that's only between 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. because there is going to be foot traffic after 3 p.m. We don't want the store associates to busy fulfilling the orders. It's the same scenario in the PBM, the pharmacy. There, we know that these, the dispensers can do this much of it, but if there is already a backlog of dispensing because of whatever reason, mechanical or labor, we automatically balance it out, saying that though the capacity is 10,000, I cannot drop those anymore because they're already behind it. It is dynamic. You don't need to set the threshold. You can look at it and say, what, this is, you can identify saying that the cutoff time is 4 p.m. and I don't see there's still an 80% of the orders. You can take those orders out and you don't even source them. So it's workload balancing is basically the ability to do the fulfillment in the distribution centers or pharmacies or wherever it is. Basically, that's what really the workload balancing is. It has multiple attributes in it.
Okay, very good. And then wrapping up here, we'll kind of take one more question, I guess. We've seen this one too before, Satish, which is kind of, what's the staffing level it takes to, manage the system once it's installed? Is it a big resource commitment, or what kind of support, staff requirements do you typically see?
It's to just manage the DOMs alone. Typically, what we noticed is 0.5 to 1 person at most. What basically we noticed is the business team gets trained on it. For example, sourcing, they know how to upload the Excel of the zip codes. They do it by themselves. The supply chain teams, like customer service, they will know that how to cancel the, or if there's an automatic cancel back orders. So the application, if from the cost perspective, if I'm going to bring in the DOMs, how many people I need to hire is always a question. I always say it's probably a 0.5. That's the average we see across the board.
Okay,
because it's all about the business rules. It's all about the rules. It's all about the understanding of the orchestration, how it works. That's really the key, is that understanding of the abstraction is really the key here.
Very good. And obviously that's a very, very modest level of full-time, supporting at a 0.5 of a person. I know we've seen it sometimes where it's two different people that each kind of, share the responsibility or whatever. So it's neither one's full-time job. So very good. So with that, I think we're going to wrap it up. Certainly appreciate your attendance here today. Satish, I want to thank you for your great comments and insight here today. Would love to talk with you about this. Appreciate it if you're watching live with us here today. You're being here shortly before the Memorial Day weekend, and hope you have a great one of those. And from Softbeyond, we thank you very much one more time for being here today, and look forward to a conversation down the road. Thank you so much.
Thank you.